I'm gonna mute myself until you're ready so you don't hear our inner thoughts.
And we are live. Well, good evening, everyone. We are live and we are grateful that you're here with us this afternoon.
Good evening, good evening, good evening.
Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk with the Pains. When I married this guy, I got a new name. The Pains. Let's talk with the Pains. And so, you know, as we have been going this year, Sean, we've had an amazing opportunity to speak with different people, right?
Yes.
We talked with, we affectionately call her Mother Gothard, right?
Yes, we did.
Elder Doris Gothard. She talked to us about?
That was finance.
That was finance. And we had a chance to talk with Chaplain Adrian Benton, and we got to talk about disappointment, actually failure and forgiveness. Failure and forgiveness, right?
Yes.
And then we talked about some communication things, right?
Yes.
We had Dr. Phil.
Dr. Phil.
Dr. Phil was with us, and he was with us, and we talked about and then we had John and April, right?
Yes.
And we talked more about communication, right?
Communication.
And ever since John and April have come, I've got to be honest with you, Sean we have been doing better. I've been doing better with fubbing. How about you?
I've been doing better also. She is still a serial fubber if you're out there, and we're working on that.
Working on it. But I didn't realize prior to John, I didn't realize how offensive it was. And I thought fubbing, that's such a light topic. But as it turns out, folks, it was an issue in the Payne household. Sean was able to share with me why it was deeply offensive. And so actually our relationship has gotten better since I discovered the fub.
And for those of you who were not watching that program, I'm going to ask that you go back and do that. But fubbing is basically when someone is playing with their phone, whether it's texting or calling or what have you, while you're trying to have a conversation with them.
Like what I'm doing right now.
So right now she is on her phone and I'm talking and she is fubbing me.
I am fubbing him.
She is fubbing us all.
I'm fubbing, but listen, hear me out.
Yes.
Hear me out. The reason I'm doing this right now is because I'm going to ask you to do something what I am doing right now, which is share this with someone else. Won't you share this link with someone else? Because we have a fantastic guest with us today, and you don't want to miss it. So I'm going to share with 3 people. Won't you join me and help me share with 3 people? If you're watching, however you're watching it, I'm sending the link to a few people who want the link right now. And here I go, sending it over. How about you, Sean? Are you sending it, sharing it?
I'm sharing.
Help
so
us share it.
Join us while we fub. Fub with us.
We are sharing the link so that other people can hear. Because today we're actually talking about dealing with disappointment. And we have, I'm so excited about our guest today. Do you want to say something about who we have? Come on, you know you want to.
Nope, I won't do it. I won't do it.
You want to say something about who we have right now. Look, we're streaming on Facebook and YouTube and ConanSDA.org/live. Go ahead and feel free. You can share it. I'm sharing it again one more time.
For years, I have taunted and tortured this man by sharing his identity. And today, I am not going to do it for you.
I don't understand what you mean.
Not going to do it. I'm going to ask my lovely wife to do so for us.
Okay.
And
I get the awesome honor of being able to let you know we have 2 amazing people with us today, a phenomenal couple, the Kibbles, Joel and Tina Kibble with us today, and we are going to be talking about dealing with disappointment. Why am I so excited?
So real quick, we have the amazing Tina Kibble and her husband.
Oh yeah, rock on, that's it. We do. We do. Here they come. Listen, we're so happy that you're here because we're going to have some honest conversation. Isn't that right?
We're going to do it. No, it's going to be honest. We've been honest before we went live.
Oh, yeah. So those of you who don't know, myself and Joey, as we affectionately call him, Joey Kibble, We go way back to the Riverman Attorney,
Oh,
Pine Forge Academy. So we go back to about maybe, I may have been in the 10th grade, and I believe you were in the 11th grade at the time. And that was before we were both going gray. So we go way back, quite a ways back. Yes, there's some gray there, Joe.
this is
Yes,
before
there
the-
is.
Sean,
before the
that's
brown.
not gray to me.
Yes, there is.
That is very dark, Sean.
Yes, well, I have to shave the gray off. That's
Thank you so much for being with us.
Absolutely.
having us.
So shall we start off by identifying the lead fubbist?
Well, I don't know. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? For those who don't know you, we do. But won't you share a little bit?
Babe,
start off.
share.
You can start.
Well, we live in Nashville, Tennessee. I sing with this group, Take Six. So a lot of my life has been
Heard of that.
traveling, but I married this wonderful woman over here. It's changed the whole trajectory of my life. And obviously we crack on each other a lot. There are always jokes. You're going to see this. So I hope this is not an all serious thing, because sometimes it just happens. Yeah. We have also a 16-year-old daughter, Carly, and a 3-year-old who is presently napping. So if one of us has to get up suddenly and leave, you'll know what happened.
You'll hear her.
Oh.
She has her daddy's pipes.
She'll
You will-
take
you
over
will hear
this.
her.
She'll take over this whole interview. In fact, when she sees this kind of stuff, she just has to be in the midst. So just so you understand.
Awesome.
But Tina is an outstanding, she's more than a project manager. She's like, the people who are behind the scenes that really stabilize the company. That's who she is.
So I kind of like this format. So Joey, yeah, go ahead and introduce your wife, and I'm going to have her introduce you as well. I kind of like that format.
Maybe I should introduce me too. I don't know that I want her.
I kind of like that, because I want to hear the real. I want to hear the real.
That assumes that I'm not going to give you the real. What? I'm the one with the gray. Yeah. So yeah, Tina.
I'm interested. This is. Let's hear what you're about to say.
Tina is obviously, as you know, opposites attract.
Okay.
Tina is the assertive, detail-oriented, ready to make a decision
Mhm.
type of behavioral personality that is opposite me. How would you describe me? Nicely.
From a behavioral standpoint, he is, and this is where we truly need balance, right? So we kind of joke, obviously I seem like the more dominant, hey, let's go get it done. But he's the one that's going to cause us to stop, think, pray, reflect. I'm already out the door ready to take action. So in that personality wise, in our marriage, he will be the one to keep us a little more grounded, hey, let's take the time to think about this. And we find a happy medium. Obviously that causes for some interesting conversations, especially as it pertains to, anything you think about family, outside matters. But yeah, we're opposite in that regard.
Tina's from Maryland. She grew up in, I guess she lived in Laurel, Maryland, Tacoma Park. And so she went to WAU and
I went to Columbia Union College and then it became WAU, but yes.
Sorry.
Most people here would know Columbia Union College. Okay.
Yeah. So, and she's very, very talented in many different areas that I'm sure we don't have time to go into, but
Okay. All right. Now, before we get started, well, we've already started, but Tina, is Any music in your background?
Sean, I
Tell the truth.
grew up playing the violin. I was classically trained.
Okay.
Awesome.
It's been years. It's been absolutely, in fact, I think probably about 7 or 8 years. In fact, the violin is broken. Not a good thing.
Because she was so good at it.
Not a good
You just tore it up. You just tore it up.
Ripped it up.
But the funny thing is, yes, I've liked music, I did orchestra, choirs, all of that stuff. But when you marry into this family, as some of my the others of those that have married into, you very quickly learn that your little skills, you're more likely to keep them to yourself, because now your brother-in-law, everybody, as Carly, 16-year-old put it, oh yeah, everybody in our family sings. And then she looked at me, she's like, oh, I mean, Mom, it's okay that you don't really sing. I mean, you can, you don't, but you can, so that's what it is. But that's okay.
Oh yeah.
That's okay.
In the background to not everybody can be on stage performing. Someone's got to take care of business.
And yet we have been on stage performing for Disney.
Wow.
Wow. Okay. I
Okay.
hear
Come on, throw that
Disney.
in there.
Well, that's
Grammy winner. Okay.
yeah.
Let's just bypass that. That's gonna go down a whole nother thing.
So this is a power couple.
Yes.
This is a power couple. And we're excited that you're here to share your story. Our topic today is dealing with disappointment. People may see, happy, glam, but really you've had to deal with some disappointment, right?
Absolutely.
Really?
So, this my part. I grew up in a pastor's family. We traveled a lot because pastors go to or move to different cities. My mother was a nurse and my dad a pastor. Everybody looking on the outside thought that was a wonderful combination. It was one that's considered traditionally what you consider Christians to look like. She played the piano, the organ, he preached, looked like a heaven on earth. But behind the scenes, it was often hell behind closed doors because people didn't see the other side of what that life looked like. So my dad to really understand that, my parents ended up divorcing they started that process right when I got into high school. But as I thought about it, this has actually been the scenario for as long as I can remember. I just didn't know what I was seeing. But it got to be at the point where it was so bad that my oldest sister, pretty much kind of politicked to get me out of the house. Now, my brother is 7 years older than me. My sister is 10 years older. So they were often gone as I was growing up. My sister went to boarding school. My brother, when we were living in Nashville, he ended up going down to Huntsville and living with my grandmother. And I just always thought, wow, they're always gone. It was just a reality. Mm-hmm. Later, I grew up to realize that there was a reason why they were trying to get out the house. Unfortunately, I was too young, so I had to stay there. And I saw a lot of the stuff behind closed doors that ended up becoming triggers for me, traumatic triggers. Again, I didn't know what I was seeing, from the dysfunctional communication, all the junk that happened behind closed doors. So it got so bad that my sister actually convinced them, hey, he needs to get out the house. He doesn't need to see any more of all this is going on. And that's why I got sent to Pine Forge. this is kind of a running joke because everybody who was at Pine Forge had a reason why they were sent to Pine Forge. And it was kind of a joke. But when you really look at it, it's like everybody was going through something
Sure.
and needed that experience. But that's what I came to Pine Forge with. Now, I don't know if you were paying attention to this, but anybody who was who was at Pine Forge during that time often found comedy because I was voted to be most likely to get married, like relationship man, because I stayed in relationships way too long.
Yeah.
It was way too heavy. It was way too serious. Even up to my graduation day, it was just all drama. It was just like, and if anybody was there, that's what they remember about it. Well, now there's a reason why that's the case, because I was trying to outrun my parents' failure.
Gotcha.
I was trying to get away from the dysfunction that made they, after all these years, they quit. So I wasn't gonna quit. And so as I'm dating to try to get away from the reality that was theirs. And you could see how inappropriate it was. It's like, dude, you're in high school. Why are you acting like you're married? But that's essentially it was my way of putting distance between the trauma that happened and where I wanted my life. And so I had no tools, didn't know how to, I had no idea how to address trauma or heal from it. So all I did was put distance between me and trauma. And as you know, trauma is gonna catch up with you and it's gonna overtake you, no matter how much distance you put. So right after I graduated, I guess they had said to themselves, we'll wait until he graduates, then we'll divorce. So I think they were trying to save me, but I ended up catching everything anyway. So they didn't hide anything from me because I saw everything. Your kids are always observing. They may not ever say anything to you, but as we learned from our 3-year-old, she watches first. She before she ever learned how to talk, she emulates the attitude that she sees in the household. Then she attaches words to it. I remember the first time we found that out was that she was, I don't know how old she was, but there was a piece of gum sitting on the ottoman and she wanted that piece of gum. And I was like, no, you can't have that piece of gum. Like, you legit, you don't know how to chew. So you can't have that. And she kept trying. She didn't have any words, but she kept trying to get it. And I was like, Aria, no. She turned around and looked at her sister and was like, I was like, wait, what'd you just say? Like, she didn't say anything, but the attitude and the tone were like, Daddy's tripping. He's tripping. And it's like, suddenly we knew that that's actually what she was saying, because they emulate and then they walk out what they emulate. We think they just hear what we say so we can kind of hide stuff from them, but they pick up on everything. Okay, let me stop there first to see if, let's take a breather for a second.
That's deep.
Okay.
So you're saying that your kids are watching. Go ahead.
So they're picking up on everything. My family felt as though we were keeping the reality from the public. But the truth was, and this is what I learned as a PK, if I really wanted to see whether a family was happy or not, I would watch the wife. I would watch the kids, because the pastor is a motivator by trade, by job. They're trained to influence, to motivate. They're trained to put on a face. If I really want to see whether the family is happy or not, I need to watch the kids. I need to watch the people who are closest to them. Now I understand what it looks like when you put all the kids in between you and you're sitting on both sides. It looks like you're dedicated to keeping your family together. It can also serve to, I don't want to sit next to her but I need to maintain the face of we're functional.
Yeah.
As Adventists, we learn how to walk this line of looking functional, but living dysfunctionally. And eventually people are going to find out what the truth is. And we're the only ones who fool ourselves thinking we're putting on this show.
Mercy.
And there are two things about that. The other thing is we as a community are satisfied with that visual.
Yep.
We're satisfied to see that, well, they look like they're Adventists. They look like they're good Adventists. They're good Christians. And so I'm not going to ask any questions. I'm not going to see if anybody needs help. I'm satisfied to see that they look like they're functional. And so I'm not going to invest anything else in it. And so it perpetuates this dysfunction. So what ended up happening with my family was my dad ended up dealing with it in crazy ways. They ended up divorcing. I remember the time that my mother left. It was during Christmas when she couldn't take anymore. She walked out. My dad ended up raising me from that point on. It was a codependent relationship because he was my caregiver, but in a way I was his emotional handler, if that makes sense.
Oh.
So I ended up taking on a whole lot more than I should have as a child.
Yeah.
But I felt responsible for his emotional state.
Yeah.
And because of that, I went through life carrying this sense of, even now, I carry this sense of emotional responsibility for everybody else. If she's not happy, I feel responsible for it. I feel like there's something I should be doing. I'm failing the world.
Yeah.
And so when I came to Pine Forge, I had that sense of responsibility for everybody else. And I felt responsible for other people and their problems, and I had to fix it or I was a failure. This followed me all throughout my life. So in essence, what ended up happening was my parents divorced. I said, I'm never going to be like that. I try my best to put distance between myself and the trauma. But when I got married the first time, I ended up repeating the same thing. I ended up becoming what I was running from, because running from it doesn't solve anything. It doesn't address the issue. It's just putting distance between yourself and the trauma. But as I said, the trauma will catch you and overtake you. And so the way that it overtook, there are conditions that I allotted for that allowed it to overcome me. A lot of times when we look to get married, we're looking for, I don't know if you all saw the movie Jerry Maguire years ago.
Sure.
Their big line was, "You complete me."
Yes.
And so everybody was like, "Oh, you complete me." But that doesn't make sense in a marital situation. I'm looking for you to be the answer to everything that I'm not. So what happens is we court each other, and you do something that makes me happy. And I expect that you're going to do that thing for the rest of my life, whatever that is. It's a you complete me mentality. And the problem is because, yes, opposites attract. We just talked about that. But the problem is I expect you to make me happy. Now, I can't make myself happy. But I expect you to do everything that I can't do for myself. And it creates this unrealistic expectation of marriage. So now when we start hitting problems, I'm expecting you then to change, because you made me happy in the beginning. Now I'm not happy. You need to do something about your side of it. The other thing we do in even dating is that we set the date, then we get a counselor.
Okay.
Wow.
We set the marital date even in our minds, and then we go for marriage counseling, which then takes the objectivity out of the actual exercise of counseling. because now we're already heading for a date. We don't really have a chance to say, okay, who am I? Let me have somebody ask the right questions. Who are you? What are your triggers? What are your values? What are the things that you go through? What makes you who you are? We don't have that chance because we're already on the clock because that wedding date is coming up. So we have no chance to find out who we are, much less to find out who they are. I didn't have a counselor that pushed the button. And when I say push the button, push the trigger button to trigger a reaction, because that's what's going to happen in life. You're going to have a situation with no money. You're going to have a situation where somebody gets sick. You're going to have a situation where somebody can't deliver on what and that button needs to be pushed so you can decide, do I really want this marriage, period? Am I ready for it? Are you the person for me? And am I the person for you? Because now that the pandemic has kind of opened up this situation, the pandemic has now pushed the button.
Yep.
And now everybody is like, oh, this ain't me. I'm out. I don't know what, we had something in the beginning. I don't know where it went, but I'm not happy and I'm out. Now life has pushed the button. When the purpose of premarital counseling, and I don't know, you can kind of chime in on this, should be, let's find out who the two of you all are. So that you can know, so you can really say, do I really want this? Am I really committed to this? Or is this kind of an illusion? You know what I'm saying? Because you get into the relationship and then you get to the point of disillusionment where you're like, oh, okay, wow, this is what marriage really is. I'm not sure I wanted this.
So hold on one second there, Joe. So for those of you who are watching, you probably noticed a change in format because generally we're asking questions and our guests are firing back. But at this time, what we want to do is we're going to allow Joey to just kind of take us on a walk here. And we're going to allow you, Joey, we're going to trust you with this and just kind of share what you're willing to share and share what you're comfortable sharing. So we're not going to fire the questions after you fire back. Just kind of walk us through and continue to, just be candid with your conversation.
You can still fire the questions. I wasn't thinking about the format. My bad.
No. I'm saying that is fine.
No.
And we are fine with that. And we want it to remain that way.
Yes.
We want it to remain that way because we want it to be honest and we want it to be comfortable. We don't want it to be rehearsed or any mechanics at all. So please, by all means, continue.
Please continue. We're having this really weird sunlight thing going on. So he's going to talk. I'm going to step aside for 2 seconds just to block it. Because every time he comes in here, he's getting blinded. So keep talking and I'll deal with that. I'll be right back.
So here's something that happened in my parents' relationship. They should have gotten counseling and therapy years before. But there's this mindset that we're in ministry and our marriage is going to take care of itself. God will take care of our marriage. But because we're in ministry, there's not a need to invest in what your marriage needs. Does that make sense?
Better speak on.
Furthermore, I've been to a lot of corporations, corporate environments. I remember going to Mutual of Omaha, and I saw that they had an entire facility just for the health of their employees, where they could go work out. If they had some kind of smoking addiction, they had services for addiction, they had counseling services, they had all this kind of stuff. I did not notice that for pastors. Now, I don't know whether they had it and my parents just didn't make use of it, but from what I heard, it was not available because pastors are supposed to have the answers. They're supposed to be, they counsel everybody else. They shouldn't need help. Where are we when they need help? But every organization that's conscientious takes care of their employees. Now, to the conference's credit, my parents really didn't seek for help. They went for help when it was too late. And I get the impression that they went for help to show everybody, oh, we're trying. Oh, we're really trying. You know, we're trying to, but essentially it was too late at that point.
But that's a great question. Who helps the helpers when they need help? That's a great question. That's a great question.
Who are conscientious that my employees go through it.
Because
when you think ahead and think that the people in my family have to be taken care of, because if they're cared for, then they'll, even at the most base level, they will produce more if you take care of their needs. It's almost like we let ourselves fend for ourselves. And then when we don't get it right, we punish our people. And so here's what they did to my dad. Now, you can take this, it's either punishment or they were helping. But they took him out of the prominent church that he was in and gave him 3 or 4 churches 100 miles apart, way out in the sticks. I know that he took it as punishment.
Wow.
Growing up as his son, I felt it as punishment. Now, I'm not supposed to be aware of this stuff,
right?
But all of this is entering my psyche, and I felt like my dad is being punished. Now, they may have tried to help, but that's how he was taking it. That's how it ended up being colored with me. So I had this sense of condemnation growing up. And so everything that happened, there was this whole sense of shame. Now, to their credit, if you need the tools, because I was always taught that therapy was only something that in a society that says never let them see you sweat, therapy admitted that I'm a failure. I don't have it together.
Yes.
Now, I got that definition really from my parents. Like, I'm not going to blame that on society, but it's one of the reasons why they didn't go for help. And because they didn't go for help, now the relationship is what it is. And now that I'm going through my own divorce, I don't have the propensity to go get help either. Because that just further admits that I must be a failure. And so here again, you're seeing how I'm repeating my parents' mistakes. I'm trying to get away from them, but I'm becoming more and more like, because there were no tools in place. When you have a car that doesn't work, how silly do you look when you say, my car is smoking from the hood, nobody behind me can see anything, but I'm not going to take it in because I can't be viewed as needing help. Come on, man. Yeah. So you look more silly because you won't take the car in, like literally it's running on 2 flats, but you're not going to take it in because I don't know how people see me as I'm doing. So I'm just going to keep on rolling until the wheels fall off. So how silly this sounds? This is how silly it is when it comes to our marriages. Marriages are the one situation that we feel like we're going to roll the dice and get right.
Come on now.
Like everything else, we go to college, we need counseling. We need counselors. We need guidance counselors. You need career counselors. You go to a hospital, you need people who are going to counsel you in your path to healing. But in marriage, oh, we just going to roll the dice. We're going to get it right just the right time. I get somebody who looks good. I get somebody who makes me feel good, and we're going to get it right. And we're surprised that the divorce rate is so high.
Mm.
Right.
Let me pause for a second. No, any questions? Yeah.
Oh, I'm thinking, oh, pregnant pause. So wait a minute.
No.
But we're surprised that the divorce rate is so high. So let's lean in on that for a minute, because divorce is not something we typically, in some circles, we don't typically talk about. We acknowledge that the rate is high, in the church, out the church, people are struggling, but how do you deal with it when it's at your doorstep? How do you?
No, go ahead.
Now, how do you do? And for you, what was that like?
So let me speak to the organization for a second. Most of the things that come to Adventist doorstep is because we won't deal with it. We're the last people to deal with social justice.
Mm-hmm.
We're the last people to deal with divorce. We're last people to deal with abuse. Like, for some reason, it almost seems behaviorally that if we don't say anything about it, maybe it'll go away. And we seem to be so we're faced with a specific set of problems that smack us in the face because we're not proactive about dealing with it. But every other organization that deals with it proactively, they're actually in the process of learning how to hear the problem and deal with it. They begin to come upon some answers.
So let me interject real quick and say to those of you out there who are either, you've had a divorce, you don't even feel like you can admit it, or you're at the point in your marriage where you feel like you're there. There is no shame. You don't have to hide that or keep it to yourself or pretend that you're perfect. No one is. Some of you may be in positions where you don't feel like anyone can know what you're really dealing with. But I pray that this story today, as we're having this conversation together, will empower you and help, and that God's will be done in your situation. So here we are with Tina and Joel having this real conversation, sharing a real story and hearing what God did. Now, I imagine there's going to be a part 2 to this, but I want you to continue. We touched on the organizational part. You're right. Organizationally, because maybe we don't want it to exist. I don't know if that's what it is. Then if we just don't acknowledge it and don't talk about it, then maybe it'll go away. But we're here to really have the real conversation. Divorce is real. It happens. Then what?
So have you noticed that the more, just like I said, the more we ignore it, the more of it you have to deal with. What you run from is what you end up facing overwhelmingly.
Sure.
Wow.
I pass by churches that have divorce care.
Wow.
But it's almost like we have this attitude that if we create a ministry for divorce care, then we're aiding and abetting divorce. We're adding to it. We're almost like passing out condoms, because if you pass out condoms, then you're aiding to premarital sex and that's the mindset that I'm talking about. The mindset is, let me not speak about it. Let me not get into it so that maybe it'll go away. Then we end up putting the stigma on whoever's going through it, because watch this. That's the way we came into the church. We came into the church either by fear or by judgment, or what we ended up giving our lives to Christ by fear. And so now you don't have any other choice to react to anybody else but by fear. Well, I came into the church, I got pregnant before I was, a certain age or whatever. Now you're pregnant. You're not going to get treated better than I got treated. You're going to go through the same thing I went through. And yet we wonder, why aren't people busting down the church to join our churches? Who wants to join a church that has that kind of attitude? Anyway.
So we know the process is broken. We we cover it over and we we do that soft shoe and we say it's fractured. But no, it's broken. It's broken. So now let's talk about life after the divorce. Life after the divorce. I mean, I know there were some dark times, but at what time, at what point do you flip the light on and it's all better?
It's about coming to the point where you finally say, I need help. For me, that was a period of years because I didn't want to admit that something was wrong with my marriage. I didn't want to admit that what I was seeing, what I was feeling was that it's really breaking down. And the one thing that I had learned from my parents was pride.
Okay.
I know this thing, something is not right. Stuff is going wrong, but I don't want to be honest with it because maybe if I just keep rolling the way I'm rolling, it'll go away. Or the wind will shift and it'll just make itself better.
Yeah.
When we got to the point where I was told, I don't want this. There's nothing that's going to help me. Counseling's not going to help. First of all, I heard that before. I heard that before as I went through my parents' divorce.
Sure.
Because I was trying to figure out, why am I familiar with this feeling? As a child, I went through divorce. As now an adult, I'm hearing it for a second time, and it's pointing directly at me. So it was very familiar to hear it. It was the very statement that I didn't want to hear, and I had been running from all of my life. But that statement has to, not even that statement. For help to begin, you have to come to the point of realizing I need help. Just saying. So before you walk into Alcoholics Anonymous or before you start the meeting, as I've heard, they started off, my name is Joel Kibble, and I'm an alcoholic. It's a simple statement, but everything hinges on that statement. Because if you walk in, look, yeah, I'm Joey Kibble, and somebody told me that I need to be here, so I'm really just here for that. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, you're not even ready to receive help yet because you still think that it's somebody else's fault. I thought that the way I turned out was somebody else's fault. It's my parents' fault. It's society's fault. It's my ex-wife's fault. It's anybody else's fault but mine. I don't need help. They need help. I'm not the problem. They're the problem. A situation, often before we can get help, we have to smack the wall. Now, you don't have to smack the wall. You can decide, you know what? I need help right now. Let me start going for help now. But often we'll let the wall smack us before we get to that point. That's the first point. You got to come to the point where you recognize I don't have the tools and I need help. And then second, you have to allow yourself to start getting the help. That was the first step of my breakdown process. And that took a while because it took a while for me to live with it and really realize, wow, because you go through the process of denial first, like shock, overwhelm, and then denial. This is not happening. It's got to be. There are nights that I just woke up and my brain was just constantly rebooting, like this is not over. It was a bad dream. So I had to get through that stage first, and that's part of every trauma that you go through. But realizing that you need help, and then taking the steps to get the help. I had no idea. I didn't know what to do at that point. But Providence had begun to direct some people into my life to help me start to get help. One of those people were Elder Kelly. He's been a spiritual mentor. When all of this came crashing down, I was so traumatized, I could not remember the number that I've known all my life to even call him, to tell him what was going on. I couldn't remember it. When I finally calmed down, I was able to call him. His thing was, okay, this is something that's beyond me, but I'm going to direct you to people who can help you. Now, let me just pause here. God has created everybody who's on this planet and put something in their hand that they can do that's unique to them that the world needs. There are people who are attuned to listening to your car's engine, and they know what it needs. They can track down the process. There are people who listen to your heart. They specialize in listening to your heart, so they know how to treat what you need. God gave them that gift. There are people who know how to listen to the emotions, and they are tooled to helping you walk through that process. It was a matter of, God, please connect me with the person who's passionate about walking me through this part of my life.
Wow.
And he did that. And now I can say it was an amazing process, because here's what happened. I realized that counseling is not a confirmation that I'm a failure.
You may need to repeat that again for our audience.
Therapy and counseling are not a confirmation that I'm a failure.
One
There's
more
a
time.
difference.
Let's tweet that.
Somebody
Let's tweet
repost
and
that.
send that out.
There's a difference in failing and being a failure. I thought I was a failure because I was failing.
Okay.
But let me put some perspective on failure. The vaccine that they came out with that vaccinated all these people was a series of failures that they learned from. It was formula number whatever that finally was sent out to the masses. All the formulas before were failures, but their mindset was, look at it, because the process of vaccination is not a failure. It's just that the particular formula needs more help.
Wow.
So let's go and identify what happened, break down that formula, break down the sickness, and see where it didn't match up. The next formula that comes out, they're going to hit it because they learn from every failed attempt. It doesn't mean that you're a failure because you've gone through failure. So the process is the same. God sends somebody who is tooled at listening to the emotions to walk you through the breakdown process, to isolate the problem areas, address them, and then put you back together.
Now, you are killing us, Joe. You're killing us.
Shaking my head.
I mean, I'm looking at the comments here, and all I'm hearing is deep. But so, I mean, you've given us the meat. Now, what I want, as we wind up our conversation, or this portion of the conversation,
it's just part one,
because there will be part two.
There will be part two.
I need to know: is there hope? Can you rebuild a great relationship, rebuild and have a great marriage, a great relationship after you've gone through all that pain? Is that possible?
Number one.
And let's hear from, I want to hear
the reason why I say that is because I didn't feel like I deserved another chance. I felt like I needed to pay for my failure for the rest. So when I started going through the process of divorce, I was already condemned in my own mind. And I already told myself, I don't feel like singing. I don't feel like getting up in front of anybody. I don't feel like preaching because I feel like a hypocrite and a failure.
Wow.
I didn't feel like I deserved to have a second chance. Because now see how this trauma exposes how you see God. I felt like I failed myself and I failed him. So I need to punish myself. I can't go back to him because I should have been perfect. He wanted me to be perfect. And now I failed at being perfect. And it exposed the wrong idea I had about God. Then it exposed the wrong idea I had about me. So that I grew up in a culture that did not allow failure to happen.
Wow.
That's the only reason that's the only way you learn, is you learn from things that fail. But there's a difference, and I have to say it again. Because I failed doesn't mean that I'm a failure. If she hits the wrong note on a violin while she's practicing, that doesn't mean she's a failure at violin. That just means you correct the note that was wrong. You know what I'm saying? And then she becomes a person who can play beautifully, but everybody works through failed situations and they learn from them. That's the point, is to learn from all of the different areas that we suffered from. And if you learn from them, you become bigger. You ingest those problems. It's just like food. You put food into your mouth, it gets broken down, the nutrients get extracted from that food, and what's not now applicable gets pushed out.
So here, hold on a second. So you've hit a few bad notes. You've hit a few sour notes in your life, and I like saying that. So you've hit a few bad notes, and you felt that you were broken.
Yeah.
And here comes Tina.
Yeah.
Here comes Tina.
Before Tina comes along, I had to go through this process of healing. To start the process of healing, that's when I went to a particular therapist that began walking me through myself, walking me through listening to my experience. And it's not even, it's funny. He didn't necessarily have the answers.
Right.
He just knew how to ask the right questions. That caused me to begin to say what, and the answers came out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Right.
For instance, why did you choose her? Well, what made her separate from everybody else? I didn't have an answer for him. He's like, so you chose a person that you're going to marry for the rest of your life and you don't know why you chose them? And when I said, well, she chose me. And as soon as it came out of my mouth, I realized, oh man, he said, so when a man finds a wife, he finds a good thing. You're saying that, not that it doesn't happen, but you're saying she chose you and that's why it would. So why do you think she chose you? And it's like every question he asked caused me to think like, wow, now I'm starting to see I didn't know who I was.
Sure.
I'm looking for her to complete me. I'm looking for her to validate me, but I'm not even validating myself. I don't even know who I am. I was a train wreck waiting to happen. So that process happening, as that began to happen, and I started getting retooled, then I started asking God, wow, is it possible for me, am I gonna get married again? Will I have a better? And God at that point was like, oh, yes. Because he knew he had her in mind. But I had to come to a certain level of healing even before I started dealing with her. Because what I was dealing with had nothing to do with her, had everything to do with a broken mindset. If you have a broken mindset, it doesn't matter the people that you bring into contact with me. My mind is broken. I'll break every one of these situations because this is broken. When this is transformed, so let me answer that other scenario first. Two halves don't make a whole in this situation. two codependent people can't come together and be a whole.
Wow.
They are a codependent couple. Two independent people come together and choose to be interdependent with each other. And that makes a whole unit. But not because the two of them can't live alone. Like I can't exist. I'm codependent. I need to find another codependent person so that I can be part of it and then we can make a whole. That makes a codependent relationship.
So look, you guys are wondering, Tina has been very quiet, but I want to assure you, Tina has a story. And you're probably saying, well, he's talking a lot. I wonder what she's thinking. I assure you, you are going to hear about what Tina is thinking.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know what? Can you believe that it's almost been an hour of our time together? Now, this is what I'm going to ask. I want to ask you, Tina, listening to what he said, could you reflect a little bit about what you're hearing? And what are you thinking now? Hearing this, I'm sure you've heard it before, but what would you like to share with those who are watching with us at this point?
So number one, I'm not quiet. I'm letting him do his thing.
Thank you.
Do not be fooled. In this particular instance, as we kind of started off with that topic, of divorce, I'm not divorced, right? So I did not feel as though, hey, let me insert my experience. I've dated before, I've gone through situations, but that whole experience is something unique to what he's been through. What I can say though, as a person who is not divorced, but even just through a standard, what I would say a standard dating process, you still develop a lot of the same type of situations. With every relationship, you should be learning more about yourself, but you find yourself sometimes choosing the same person, or in my case, I would choose one and then, okay, that didn't work. And I would swing so far to the other side that I would then go and choose something that's not going to work either. And eventually when we started dating, I always joke and say he put this whole ultimatum and said, I need to know that you're going to get therapy and this and that. And we have similar, not quite the same, but, we had some similar experiences with our upbringing, what we saw being a part of the church, our families, things like that. And I also had to deal with that, even though I didn't have a divorce or something that was, documented and public, especially his, as public as that quote unquote was. It was the same principles. There were so many things I had to deal with to even get to a point where I could be at a place where I could be with someone and it not be a codependent relationship, or it not be, okay, I'm in a bad place right now. Here's an opportunity, not necessarily a rescue, but like, okay, I'm gonna go here because this looks better, and I think a lot of times we make decisions based off of that versus really dealing with what we've been through, what our individual path may be, whether that's divorce, whether that's even just experience through dating, through life, your family, those things. So everything he's saying, obviously, yes, was a little bit more tailored through the process of divorce. But very applicable to, even my life and where I was when we came together. One of the things I'll say, and I know we have 2 minutes, we had talked about, I'm sorry, that wasn't a take on you, Ben.
None taken.
The thing about the counseling process, which is what we were most recently speaking of, it was often ripping off bandages. And we needed that. We actually went through 2 years of counseling before we were even engaged. Now, part of that is we understood the specific and special situations we were going into. It was going to be a blended family. We were in a long distance relationship, interracial marriage. Everything you can think of. There were so many things. It's like, okay, we both know that we need to at least get somewhat prepared for this, because this could take us out single-handedly. But one of the things that, and this is going to sound a little crazy, but it almost ties it together in a way. Going through that counseling experience, I think a lot of times people, number one, you don't want to admit you need help. Number two, rehashing that type of pain is something nobody wants to go through. And number three, that all leads to that same theme of disappointment. But what I did find is through that process, we experienced so many disappointments within our relationship, it almost tooled us to be able to figure out, okay, you've disappointed me, I've disappointed you, this situation has disappointed us together. Are we going to now be able to bounce back from that? Are we going to fight each other? Are we going to come together? How do we do that? And that made a huge difference in even being able to be tooled with, how do I deal with disappointment? Because disappointment is inevitable. So I guess I will end there. I hope that answered your question.
Well,
See what I mean?
I've got to say this. There is no way possible that we can deal with such a topic within the confines of 1 hour. It's not even possible. So I am going to invite you to return, because our listeners, and I'm looking at the responses, our listeners want to finish this conversation, and we are just getting started.
We're just getting started.
We are scraping the top.
Just
right
the
here.
surface.
So is it possible that you will grant us your services once again? Can we have you guys back? Is that possible?
Yes, August the second Saturday at 6.
We're happy to cut. Our lives are open books. Absolutely.
We're so grateful. And thank you so much for being with us. One
Thank you for having
takeaway,
us.
dealing with disappointment, one takeaway is learn from it.
Yes.
One takeaway, learn from it. We're so many more things that we're going to share with you next month, folks. You want to share this, rebroadcast, repost, share it, because there's so much more here.
And I feel like I've been at a counseling session.
I've been encouraged and empowered. I'm telling you, there's so much more that's coming that you don't want to miss.
Man.
Also, you can follow Joey and Tina. Can you tell them real quick how our people can follow you between now and next month? We don't want to leave them hanging.
Specifically, especially if you're dealing with divorce, there's a Facebook group called Beyond Recovery that challenges individuals who have been divorced to learn how to thrive and not just survive divorce. Otherwise, maybe you're not at that point. Great. But you can reach out to me, Joel Kibble, because this is what our passion is on Facebook. You can do that. But if you're part of Facebook, you've already gone through it, you're ready to stop trying to survive and you need to thrive, go to Beyond Recovery. And that is our support crew for thrivers, people who are intent on thriving after divorce.
Also, we believe in support.
Yes.
We believe in support and supporting those who are doing amazing things. Joey, tell us about your book and tell us where we can find that book.
My book, it's a devotional. It's a 35-day devotional, and it's called Out of the Desert Flow Rivers. We cleaned up so thoroughly that I took the book back and put it up on the shelf. But you can find that on Amazon, ebook, print book, an audio book, however you like to learn. But that book specifically I grew up as a pastor's kid, learned all the tenets of religion, did not learn how to hear God's voice. That book specifically addresses my experiences in just learning how to recognize, oh, that's your voice. Out of the Desert Flow Rivers. You can find it on Amazon if you search for it.
Amazing book.
Yes.
You'll hear God speak to you. I do. But before we go, we want to pray for
Please.
Everyone today, and let them know, everyone, the second Saturday in August at 6 p.m. Eastern, that is the 14th. But we want to pray for you, whatever you're going through. And I'm going to invite Minister Kibble to pray for us today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Heavenly Father, I want to thank you so much. I know I remember the day thinking I will not recover from this, thinking there's no way to bounce back from this though. How could this situation possibly honor God? I felt like I had failed you. I remember thinking it an insult to think, how could I keep singing? How could I keep speaking? How could I keep sharing? And then you showed me, dear God, just like Peter, when you are converted, not if you get converted, but when you are transformed and converted, strengthen your brother. And I know I promised, as you save me from this, I will never close my mouth about how to empower your people with the keys that you gave me. And so for everyone who's going out, first of all, everyone who's going through this, first of all, secure their situation. Help them to understand that they are very much in your hands, even in this situation. Bring peace to them, because the kind of storms that hit their minds are tempestuous and make them feel, some people, like it's not worth living. I pray that you settle in their minds that you have always had a purpose for them, whether they've felt like they failed or not. You have always had a purpose for them, and your salvation for them includes their screw up. It includes, so they have not, just like I haven't, they have not disengaged your will. Your will included all the screw ups all throughout their lives. And it has nothing to do with the plans that you have for them. Help them to understand that. Give them peace, dear God. Then I pray that you clear the way and open the way to getting them to the help that you have for them, that you've had for them, and you've been preparing for them all this time. I thank you that you are well knowledgeable about each one of your children, what they're dealing with. And I pray that from this point where we can pay attention to it, let transformation begin. Thank you, Lord, for hearing and answering, because you've already answered this prayer. This is why we're having this Zoom call, because you've already seen it and you're already bringing it into being. And help them to understand it and that they can trust you. Bring them healing. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you.
We want to thank you, Joey and Tina. We want to thank you for your time. We want to thank you for your candor. We want to thank you for just sharing you with us.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you for
us.
having
We're
us.
honored.
Absolutely.
We're honored.
Everyone will see you on the second Saturday in August. I believe that's the 14th at 6 p.m. Eastern for part 2.
Yes.
You don't want to miss it.
Yes. Take care.